Hello, Simpson Virtues, and welcome back to Crown's magical money crypto cave.
What was that squeakiness going on right there? Are you going through puberty right now? Hey, what is your actual age? I need to know this right now. And by the way, for crypto, we're going to be some little boys getting spanked here as well. It does look like on a Thursday. Thursday is the most likely day to be a red day. As we're going over a little bit later, there are still a few setups to be aware of. And of course, I do want to follow up from the 12-hour setup that we spoke about in yesterday's video. Many things going on across the lands, but let's just jump into it right here. As we always do, started off with some daily price statistics. Thursday is certainly the most likely day of any day in the week to close negatively from open to closure, with almost 56% of all Thursdays closing negatively since this bull market began in 2023. It doesn't necessarily have the highest negative return, but it's, kind of par for the course at 1.77 for those negative returning Thursdays. In the event that we do see a positive closing Thursday, on average, it does return about 2%. I think that would still be, that would actually be rather conclusive, in my opinion, if Bitcoin were to close above that region, as that would indicate Bitcoin's ready to take the next leg up. But for right now, again, as we've been stating throughout this past week and throughout the end of last week, that this is a time period, this first week and a half to 2 weeks of August, to be a little bit more on the defensive side as things do kind of switch around here. So if we're going to put these numbers into perspective as far as the range goes, that would give us a nice bottom end of the range at just around yesterday's low at 115,800. And to the top side, again, that would be 120,150 or so. And I just want to again acknowledge that during periods of consolidation, these price statistics play out incredibly well. In fact, yesterday you can see Bitcoin did come down perfectly to the lower bound of this, and what do you know, bounced up before the end of the day. And if you did scalp that, it was a nice little quick trade there. So I just want to acknowledge this for the more short-term time frame scalpers. An indicator like this, which is specifically set up for the daily, can be extremely useful for low-term time frame scalping. Especially during these periods of consolidation. And moving on from there, I do want to get back into my notes and follow up on, yes, the 12-hour setup that we spoke about in yesterday's video. That was the 5 EMA versus the 21 EMA, or just basically the red versus, whoops, hey, that's not what I want to do, you bastard. I'm talking about the red versus the yellow right here. When we see a cross to the downside with the lower period trading below the higher period, so that'd be the red below the yellow, nearly always we do see a nice move down to, at minimum, that green moving average, which is a 55 EMA. Now, again, I am using the Quant Prime service to backtest this setup right here, which I can put back on. And we can see that throughout this bull market, which began in 2023, there's been 25 prior iterations of this setup, and 60% of those have played out in a profitable manner, meaning that when price got back down to that green 55, it was, a nice trade, a profitable trade to the short side. So, this having about a profit factor of just over 3 is quite decent. And while this one did open up yesterday, personally, I would say that this one has already kind of fulfilled its target trajectory, because we did see very quickly Bitcoin come down to that next major moving average, the green one right here. But if you are playing this by the book using the Quant Prime service, which again is kind of limited in the way that it can set up these particular types of entries, it would actually imply that we're going to see another move down around there. So again, if you did play this yesterday, I would say personally, I would look at that as already fulfilled. And if you are playing it again, well, then you're probably gonna have to wait a little bit. Any which way that this goes, however, that would again imply that at some point it does test down around here. So do be aware of that. That is effectively the lower end of your range, basically yesterday's low, which again does correlate incredibly well with the bottom end of these average returns for Thursdays on the losing side. So, if Bitcoin does come back down around there, I guess it's not too crazy to expect it today or perhaps even tomorrow. But do understand that, if you took that trade yesterday, I personally would consider this one already profitably closed, because it was just, it was right there, right? Anyways, moving on from there, I do want to get into some actual formations. Looking at the price action pivots indicator right here, we can see that Bitcoin on CME is formulating itself into something resembling a descending triangle here. Does have a higher probability to break out to the downside than the upside, but as always, we don't really care on this channel about the presumptions of that. All we care about is statistics and then implied moves or returns from that that you typically get on average. So looking at this, it would have a slight downside bias, I suppose. If we were to see this one actually broken to the downside, which would require a closure below the bottom boundary, which is the bottom price action pivot on CME, which has a slight premium over spot price action, which would be about 116, that's again on a daily closing basis, then yes, there would be an implied move all the way down here to about 110, which as you can see would just about perfectly align with that green 55 EMA. Again, I don't think that that would be like a death sentence or anything like that. If Bitcoin were to play out a move like this, I actually think that would be quite a healthy retracement and would ultimately be a higher term time frame, higher low, or at least a very good potential for that. But, you know, that would be a $6,000-ish move, which is always going to be a $6,000 move, and that's fucking big. Anyways, of course, because formations are imperfect, it can indeed break out to the upside. How would you actually define a confirmed breakout to the upside? Well, in this case, I do think it would be actually appropriate to be a little bit more aggressive in the essence of, you know, of declaring a breakout. I do believe that I'd be using Tuesday's high as a closing point, which is just above 120, as a confirmation for a breakout with an implied target, you know, north of 125. Let's just call it 125 to 126. Same shit as what we've been saying before. You know, do things stop there for a moment and then continue? Probably yes, but yeah, that'd be the first implied target, so to speak. Again, Bitcoin would need to close back above Tuesday's high at minimum. If you want to go by the book, which is probably the better way to do things, especially if, you know, you're more conservative, you'd be using the topside price action pivot here, which is 121 and a half or so. Again, this is on CME, so there's a premium over spot price action. If we were to look at spot, those same numbers would be about 120 to the upside, and to the downside would be more or less yesterday's low. Now, I do want to go over a very specific thing here. We'll save it for the end because it is relevant to the lower term timeframes. But while we're here, I do want to go over the higher term timeframe stochastic momentum, just see how all the pivots have changed and shifted. Daily time frame, as we went over in yesterday's video, is going to continue to the downside here, and this one was obviously a lot more conclusive than what we saw in spot price action yesterday. Although both of them are, of course, you know, to the downside right now. But this one will continue to the downside if today closes below 120,500 on CME. Right now, trading more than $1,000 below that. Again, it's a long day left to go for this one. It will close in just under 4 hours, so do keep that in mind. But as long as this is positioned to the downside, I just don't think that there's any major rush into, you know, long positions, you know, if you're looking for an actual breakout. On top of this, if we go to the 2-day time frame, which again closed last night, this one's going to also be showing a downside bias as long as Bitcoin's below 119,550 or so. Again, not going to be closing tonight, will be closing tomorrow, but you know, you can see all these numbers start to stack upon each other at around the same numbers. The 3-day time frame, again, we have a new update on this one. 121 is a new pivot. It looks like it might even be losing the critical zone if it does fail that pivot on the next closure, but that's not coming for another 4 days. The 5-day time frame is going to be closing tonight. This one will also turn down, in fact, if Bitcoin does finish the day on CME below 119,330, which is actually only trading $60 below right now. So again, you know, it's a little bit too early to be speaking about these things. Maybe it's even better if I do these videos like around market close, to be honest. But yeah, as of right now, you know, it's getting way up there, as are all of the other higher term timeframes. This one pretty much at the exact same levels that we saw on the December high from last year. That was this high right here, that first spike up to 109 before that first major correction. You know, could we get something similar over here? Yes. But again, is you know, am I bearish off of that? You know, bearish is, in my opinion, a term more relative to the higher term time frame and macro trend, and this would still be an uptrend even if Bitcoin were to come down all the way to, like, you know, 105, for example. So just understand, like, when we're dealing with really big numbers like this, you can get these fucking crazy moves and they don't really, you know, they don't really mean all that much in terms of trend. But of course, you know, if you're holding through that, then that could be very painful, probably especially for altcoin hodlers, the altcoin investors. Yes, the altcoin, my tokens that I've invested in because I did very great do your own research activities have told me that XYZ shitcoin is going to the moon, and Crown is just trying to, he's just trying to FUD you out of your positions. That's right. I want your Cardano shitcoins, sir, because what am I going to do with them? I don't know. Shove them up my ass and have them come up my mouth hole. I don't know. That sounds like a good use case because it probably doesn't do much else. Anyways, I'm sure it does do other things, which the Cardano holders of the world will reprimand me in the comment section for. Look, you could just replace Cardano with any other fucking altcoin that you desire, and I'm sure it's going to be the next big winner, the next big Bitcoin. Yeah, woo, amazing. Okay. Anyways, yes. So now back onto this. I do want to just go over a super simple way of looking at price actions, particularly for today, that would immediately confirm, at least least in my opinion, both a short and medium-term bearish buy. Still doesn't necessarily confirm an actual breakout to the downside, but I personally think it would really put Bitcoin in a strong position to do so, and that would be if Bitcoin trades below this last 4-hour low. So I'm very specifically speaking to the lower term time frame traders here. I'm looking at Bybit's inverse perps here, and that would be 117.773. If Bitcoin trades below that, especially if it closed a 4-hour delta below that, I think that you're going to revisit yesterday's low at just under 116. Maybe it goes all the way for the white 200 simple here, which is about $1,000 lower. Anywhere in that pocket would be fair game. Does Bitcoin get another bounce from that region? Very possible. Very, very possible. But again, it's going to put it right on the precipice of an actual, confirmed breakdown. Again, closing below that region on a higher term time frame, especially like a 12-hour or a daily, should confirm the actual breakdown. And like I said, that would imply move down to about 110. Spot goes a little bit lower than that, I suppose, but just keep that in mind, because I do think that that's a pretty easy way to be seen on the lower term timeframes. Like, is this, is it in? Is it happening? Is this it? Is this it? Anyways, that's what she said, Elsa. Extremely inappropriate. This is a family fun fuck channel, and we can't be talking about shit like that. It's ridiculous. Anyways, if you're wondering where I got it from, my mom went on a long rant last night telling me about gay sex parties and how AIDS started. I thought it started from like a dirty bird bath in someone's backyard, but no, apparently it's just a bunch of guys boning in San Francisco or something. Anyways, who knows about this? I don't really care, honestly. But let's go into now. Let's assume Bitcoin does break down here. Again, it has not broken down. There has been no confirmation just yet. Yes, there are some signals that do suggest it's more likely than not right now. But until Bitcoin actually closes below this bottom boundary here, again, I would not confirm a breakdown. That would still be based off of the next sort of major area of opportunity, in my opinion, would be based off of, again, that hash ribbons indicator signal. I won't go through it in this video because I don't really think there's new viewers here anyway, so don't need to go over all of the old nonsense. But in terms of just kind of marking out a little blue box of peace and prosperity, I'd be looking anywhere between about 110 to 105 if that were to happen. And I'd be looking at this as a high probability area for a higher low if you do want to play the next bullish leg of this market, assuming that another bullish leg does happen. Obviously, it's always possible that the market just falls to shit, but I'm going to make the assumption here that probably not. Personally, here's what I think is going to happen. And I'm speaking now directly to the TA nerds who have been on this channel for a long time, because I figure everyone else has probably ticked off this video at this moment. What do I think is going to happen here? So yeah, I am kind of biased towards a downside breakdown. Probably does get somewhere around this blue box. If it does, then to me, that would imply that Bitcoin is going to go through another month to month and a half long consolidation period. Maybe see something like this. Let me just draw out some LARP lines here. Hey, that's not what I want. I want my brush because I'm a painter. Something like this, blah, 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 hangs down there, scares everyone. It's like, oh my God, it's going to 90 now or something, whatever the fuck people are going to say. Takes about a month and a half, digs its way out, and then carries on with the next leg and probably leads us into a culmination of this market. I guess in very late Q3 / early Q4. That's kind of where I'd be aiming towards. But yeah, I think things, again, if they do break lower here, you're just going to see things get slower and slower again. Remember last summer, and then of course the summer before that. I think this past summer over here in 2023 is probably more analogous to what you're likely to see, something relatively similar to this consolidation. And these just naturally take time. And whenever we do see that hash ribbons indicator signal, almost every time, not every time, but like I would say more than 90% of the time, we do see a month to 2 month long consolidation following that signal before the next sort of major move begins. So, do things get slower near the end of summer? That's typically the going rate anyways, so I don't think I'm saying anything too crazy here. But of course, all of this, I can be massively unconvinced of all of this, or just convinced of the upside continuing from here. Again, if those upside continuation conditions are met, just, a closure above 120, I'm in. And until that happens, sideways is the name of the game, I suppose. Anyways, we'll be signing off on that note. As always, we wish everyone the best. Soon we shall be at our next destination, and then we'll be able to set up like an actual, work setup, which I'm very excited about. And we'll be back to full speed, which I would be very excited about. So yeah, as always, wish everyone the best. Would you like to do the outro? All right, Elsa has a special message.
Fuck you, and I'll see you tomorrow.